guess we're on then.
I think we're on. And I'm going to encourage people outside of the tent, just come on through, sit down. This is home style. If you're looking at 10C, if you're wondering what is happening at 10C, you need to come and check what's happening out at 10C.
That's right.
Let's come on over here. Bring it on.
Yeah, hurry up and get over here. Okay, why did you decide to write the book?
Why did I decide to write the book? The honest answer is opportunity. So belonging, a daughter's search for loss and love, a daughter's search for identity through loss and love was really, it sort of emerged out of a story I did for CBS News, for CBS This Morning, and a producer asking me to, in the moment following George Floyd's death and the social justice marches that were taking place, and the background of me and covering all of those things over the last 12 years for CBS News, from Trayvon Martin to Michael Brown to the Emmanuel Nine to I've been on sort of like the forefront of that coverage. And the question was, are we in a different moment? Are we in a moment where we're really going to see changes to the outlook and of those people who were involved in it? And those people who were involved in it, quite frankly, was an entirely different cast of characters from across the globe. And so I kind of put my producer called and said, hey, we want to see it through your lens of coverage. And I picked up my phone and I dictated a script that was 5 minutes long. And in the middle of it, I turned the lens on myself and said, racism has impacted me my entire life. Born into the unrest of the late 1960s, I am the product of a union between an African-American father and a woman who to this day does not acknowledge my existence. And in that moment, Gail King, the fabulous Gail King, was just speechless coming out of the piece and started to just interrogate me in a way that engaged me and engaged her in a conversation that we literally just cruised right off the air. And 37 minutes after that story ran, a publisher at HarperCollins reached out by the name of Lisa Sharkey. And so when people say your story will resonate, I'm thinking, oh, my story isn't tragic enough. My story isn't like, from trial to tribulation and triumph to the degree of which, I didn't think I was worthy of, a book. But she assured me, and those friends of mine who've read it have told me I'm telling the story of those folks in the middle. This vast array of people who often, because their lives aren't extraordinary, but because they too were born into a circumstance where their origin was unlike what this society tells us is okay, what this society says is normal, what this society says is true. So that's really the story of the birth of this book.
Well, everything that happens in your book and belonging flows as a result of your father. I mean, it's really complicated. Your
So
father,
my father was married.
yes, Dr. Ross
Miller
Jr. was
Here,
a
move the
secretive,
mic up a little bit.
was
Sure
a secretive man. He must have cut a dashing figure.
he was a dashing figure.
He was a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Yes.
He ran his own medical practice.
Yes.
He was involved in the city council and local school board meetings.
No. He was the first African American city council member.
Okay.
And he was on the school board.
Okay.
Really important to make that distinction.
I'm corrected.
Right.
And he was an elected Democratic Party delegate.
Yes.
Okay. He's a civil rights activist,
Yes.
father of two adopted
Children.
girls, and a charming rogue. That last description is yours.
Yes, he was a charming rogue. Um, how many of you know charming rogues? Are you a charming rogue? You are giving a charming rogue to me right now.
How
Just
do you?
kidding. I'm kidding you.
How do you analyze your father? A man of many parts. In hindsight.
So I analyze him as a human who never really hid who he was from me. A child, you know, most dads, I think, are seen through rose-colored glasses. And I'm not saying that every father, every man, certainly every mother, every woman has, you know, rogue-like tendencies. But what I am saying is that I am sure that a lot of them have made mistakes. And he made a lot of mistakes outside the realm of roguishness. But I was always exposed to them, and not that he would talk about them, but they were just so apparent. And so I feel as though I knew my father in a way that just he was real. And I could get angry at him, and I could get, you know, ecstatic about him, and I could be proud of him, and I could be disappointed in him. And it was like, I guess it was, yeah, I think I longed for a childhood in which he was like this, you know, amazingly unfaltering figure. But it really made me very conscious of behavior and choices. And so I was like the mother figure to many of my friends who were getting involved in things that were well beyond their years, and counselor to so many who might have led, you know, been led astray. And so, like, I think that the first, like, from age 12 to, I would say, age 33, I was like the best model daughter, model, no, I wasn't perfect, but model daughter, model friend, model wife. I did everything that was just so.
Yeah.
And you know, model girlfriend. But I wasn't a girlfriend very long. I think 4 years of my life I was a girlfriend. That's about it. But it really was sort of like a ruler for me to show up in a way that was, I think, sensible.
You lived apart from your dad.
Right.
You lived apart, and he lived in a 3-bedroom condo in Long Beach.
Yes.
And your life in living apart, you were sheltered, you were well off.
So yeah, well, you haven't mentioned Big Mama.
I'm getting to
I
it.
know, because really,
you're stepping on it. And yet you were so unorthodox. You lived with your paternal grandmother, who was
Yes.
your first legal guardian and surrogate mother. Please tell us about Beatrice Burson Miller, Big Mama.
So I don't think she was my legal guardian. If she were my legal guardian, I would have been receiving checks from Social Security, which I'm really sort of upset that I wasn't like made to
Then it was
be.
just Vondella who was.
No, neither one of them were legal.
So, but they
My
just,
father
it was
never
just
gave up any parental.
Wow.
No, my dad was like firmly entrenched in my life, and I think was a bit too proud to even think of relinquishing.
You didn't
like
have
that.
any legal guardianship.
He had legal guardianship.
He was a okay.
He had legal guardianship, and so, and so, like, but I had all of these incredible women in and out of my life, from my grandmother to my aunt to play aunts. It was just a way for me to kind of like fill a void of absence that was clearly present in my life.
So tell me about your grandmother.
Oh my gosh! So I wonder, and I tell every audience, it's so important for you to interview your ancestors, your parents, your grandparents, because there's so much of her life I wish I could ask her about now. But this is what I know of her. She was born in 1895. She was clearly born to parents of means. Her father was a Pullman porter, and he worked the weekends at a country club. He had a 16-room house with indoor plumbing in Dallas, Texas. She went to boarding school outside of Dallas. And then she was shipped off to Washington, D.C. To go to college at Howard University in 1912. Now, just that trip alone, I am fascinated by. Imagine at the time Amtrak wasn't around. You had to.
But the
It was a
Pullman porters
series,
were.
right? But it was a series of differently owned railroads that took you from here to there. But he must have mapped out the journey for her in a way that, in much like prior to the Green Book, where he really gave her a sense, this is the person who you will
That's
contact in this town, and this Pullman porter will put
That's
you
right.
in touch with.
That's
And it just like that whole journey through the Deep South, like where did she go, and what did she encounter? And then the safety element of a father who was clearly proud and clearly concerned about his child. Like, what elements of danger was he putting her in?
Yeah,
and
she was
placing?
never alone. With the Pullman, she was never alone.
Well, the Pullman, like, I don't know. I don't know the story.
the,
Right? And I
the
missed an
railroad brotherhood,
opportunity.
the brother.
Oh,
brotherhood of
absolutely.
the, of the
It was
Pullmans.
incredible. But that journey to D.C., and then she lands in Washington at a time when women are fighting for their right to vote. And in 1913, she is at Howard University when black women are in that moment of self-discovery and engagement in the suffragist movement. And she belongs to a sorority that is, one, about to break off into two over the issue of, how are we going to get involved in this? Are we going to be a part of this march? And this march, several of them did from both entities. But, what kind of incredible moment did she think that was in the process of living through it? And then she went to Columbia's Teachers College
Yeah, I like that part.
in New York City. And I can't even imagine what this singular woman had encountered. Had she ever been ridiculed? Had she ever been sexually assaulted? Had she, my mind goes to the very worst of circumstances, right?
Yeah, too much
Because
news.
she was so proud, and there was an air of bitterness, I recall, in her. This stalwart, stoic being that was ever present, was ever present in my life. And so she wasn't like the funny grandmother. She wasn't like the warm grandmother, but she was the grandmother who I always knew adored and loved me, and like just had this uncanny ability to be present with me in a way, whether she was teaching me to read or cooking over a stove with me standing by, that she poured as much as she could into me at the age of 73 into a really hyperactive kid. I'm mesmerized by her ability.
Now, your grandmother, however, appeared to know little about your birth, or
So my father
telling-
had me in secret. So my dad apparently was,
the most secretive man in
I
the
won't say he
universe.
was the most secretive, because he was in a relationship I would later discover through my mother. Obviously, I found her. But she was, apparently, he was in this relationship with her at least 3 years prior to my birth. When her family found out she was dating my father, she comes from an immigrant, like a Mexican American immigrant family. They were working class.
Working class.
And the truth of at that time of the land of opportunity and the American dream was, you acquired it as an immigrant through assimilation. You didn't speak your language. You didn't take on any of the entities that culturally made you who you were. And so I think from her mind, her
Our
family's mind,
family.
she was engaging this social justice movement, civil rights movement at the time through her Mexican American roots. She was in self discovery, which led her to my father, who was also involved in the movement in a way. And then she's still tied to these very traditional points of view about how you make it in America. And so her brother and sister were staunchly adamant about, their path. And when they found out she was dating an African American man, they said, "It's him or us.
Ooh.
You will not be a part of this family." These are her words.
So they're going to shut her out.
These are her words. And so I totally understand the choice. The fact that she had me in secret with my father's help, because my father was determined to have me, is somewhat of a miracle. And they went to great lengths to keep the whole arrangement secret.
Yes.
But when I was born in December of 1967, 4 months later, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. My father was at the funeral with several members. He pledged Andy Young in the fraternity. He was friends with him. I mean, so this is like the scene of, like, being involved in what is taking place. And he went back home to Los Angeles and told his mother on the spot, because it was open season on anyone in the movement. This was, and so he told her, and then 2 months
He
later,
told her about you.
about me, because he said if something happened to him, he would hate for her not to have heard it from him. And so she gets on a plane a month and a half later to come get me from Birmingham, Alabama, because he sent me at 2 days old from LA Valley Hospital. He handed me off to a friend of the family who went to where his sister was, and she raised
Edna.
me for Aunt Edna, but Margaret and Aunt Edna were, like, in conjunction raising me as a baby. And when Big Mama found out I was here, she came and got me. We landed on the tarmac June, I believe it was June 7th, 1968, at the same time that, as I'm told through Big Mama, at the same time that Robert F. Kennedy's body was being taken off to go back east on Air Force One.
And your father was there at the assassination of Robert.
Oh, yeah, I
Kennedy.
forgot to say that.
He was the first.
So my father was politically involved. He was a delegate of Kennedy's. Had been in South Los Angeles campaigning with him, with Rayford Johnson and Rosie Greer and many, many other people, and was part of that incredible celebration of, I call it, my husband has a book out called The Gumbo Coalition. He also has a documentary that will be seen at the African American Film Festival on Friday called The Gumbo Coalition. And I'd have to say that Robert Kennedy had a gumbo coalition unlike anyone had ever seen before, because he had just such an array of people up and down the socioeconomic scale ladder,
very good
and
at that.
of all races, creeds, and ethnicities that were a part of this coalition. And I can't even imagine the euphoric presence in that room after he won the California primary. And literally 5 minutes after his speech ended, pow, 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 pow. Down were 6 people. And someone comes out and says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And my father rushed backstage, was halted at the door at the time by security, but pushed through.
They didn't think he was a doctor.
They didn't think he was a doctor, and he was the first to get to Robert, checked and stabilized him, and there were 5 other people shot that night. The second person he went to was a man by the name of Paul Schrade. He was shot in the head, and the third person was shot in the knee. And then he went back to Paul Schrade. And I say that because I tell the story in a way that it was the first moment at CBS News that I think I was really seen as a reporter, because I did a story on that evening. I did a story on my father, in much the same way that I did the story that turned the lens on myself. And it all spun from my son's doubt in telling him the story of my father. And he told me, go prove it. He was 12.
Another aspiring journalist.
I
perhaps.
doubt it.
He's a skeptic.
I doubt
that, right?
he's a skeptic. But what's so incredible about Mason was I was so angry and indignant that he would have the audacity to question his mother.
I got that.
And I went to the computer and I Googled my dad and RFK. And for the first time, the documents just started pouring out. FBI documents, LAPD documents. And there was a line in the documentation that read, in exchange for a ride back from the Good Samaritan Hospital to the Ambassador Hotel where the actual shooting had taken place, Dr. Ross Miller agreed to an interview with 2 CBS News reporters. And I went to work the next day and I asked the producer I'd been working with, who would hear me. It's really important that you work with people who see and who hear you, right? That you associate with people who see and hear you. I mean, from an intimate level. Like, you got to make folks see and hear you who don't want to see and hear you, because that's important too. But, he said it's worth a look. And he goes to an AP and she pours over 7 hours of video in the archives and finds that 7.5-minute moment where my dad is interviewed by Terry Drinkwater of CBS News. Now, the irony of me being a reporter for CBS News and my father having been some 45 years earlier interviewed by CBS News, that wasn't lost on me. Was not lost on me. And in telling the story, I went back, because my father had passed away by then. I went back and I found the people who were there that night, and they agreed to talk. One of them was the man who was shot in the head, Paul Schrade. The other man who was critical to telling that story died 4 months after I had interviewed him. So, you getting that information from your loved ones, you seeking out your history, your ancestry, do not wait, because it can go like that. And when your ancestor is gone, unless they've recorded it, it's lost.
Yeah. Or misremembered. Yeah. I have a question. At a certain point during your teenage years, perhaps, you became adept at compartmentalizing. Something you may have learned from your father. Can you explain that side of you?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, can you guys figure out why you... Who's really super organized here? Raise your hand. Raise it high. Okay. Who is a chaotic mess? Right. Now, do you know why your mind works that way? It just does.
It just, all right.
And so, people always ask me, how did you deal with the pain? And, was it therapeutic? And I'm sure it had an impact on me. But I can't tell you why, because I didn't cry through this process. I didn't grieve through this process. I didn't have, sullen moments that I recall through this process. I don't know what this process did for me.
Not at all.
I'm not saying it didn't have an impact. What I'm saying is I can't identify what this process did for me. Now, my husband can. My husband says, I'm so damn glad you wrote that book. And I said, why? He said, because you were able to get it off your chest. I was like, did I need to get it off my chest? He said, oh, yes.
Oh,
I
yes.
said, well, prove it. And he looked at me. He said, okay. He said, when I met you and we decided that we were going to start dating, that story's in the book too. He said, you told me whatever you do, Christian Cooper, come on over here, Christian Cooper. Come on over here, Sue Ellen. He said, wait, come. Oh, that's not who I thought it was. Oh, is it? Hey, Rev, come on over here. Sit down, Senator Warnock.
Senator Warnock.
You look like you've been lifting some weights.
Yeah, no, always looking good.
Did you buy belonging? Not yet. That's the good answer. All righty then. I'll be right over.
I have a question.
But he said, you said, whatever you do, don't abandon me. And he said, well, I don't know what that's all about, but I'm sure there's a story there. Because you don't tell someone you're embarking upon a relationship with not to abandon you at some point. Clearly, I didn't tell anybody else that I dated in my life, but clearly I thought he was the one. Mm-hmm. In the beginning.
That's a good thing.
Isn't that something?
That's a good thing.
So he said, I guess I'm going to find out, but that's an odd thing to tell someone at the start of a relationship. And so, yes, you did have something to get off your chest.
That you work through.
But more than anything, I can say this. My children have a record of my life and the lives of those around me. Hopefully they understand that your family is not just the DNA you're born into or the DNA you're connected to. And hopefully they will give me some grace. As transparent as I am through much of this, I sit back and I think, I didn't ask anybody any permission to write this book. And it was like this beeline to get it done because of the opportunity. And I feel a little bad about that.
No,
I was at a book signing and a woman was really praising me until she heard me say that. Mm-hmm. And she came up to me after the book signing and she said, my sister wrote a book about our family without asking. And that's the last time we spoke to her. And then she turned on her heels and walked off. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's one less person to worry about. I'm now.
So maybe talk to people before you do that.
Let's get to finding your mother.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
Let's get to finding your mother and your first meeting that you know of at 24.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is I'm going to tease you all. How many of you have bought the book? How many of you already own the book? How many of you read the book? How many of you not read the book? The book is sold out?
Come on, get the books in.
If that's true, they will be selling them and you'll be signing book plates.
Okay, so they have a stash somewhere.
No, I don't like book plates. If you want a signature, I am going to sign your book. I'm here for the next 2 weeks. So you tell me where you want me to show up and I will. As long as it's a beach or a restaurant
or a bar.
You call me and I'll make sure you know where I am. But I'm not going to tell everything that's in the book.
All right.
Because I want people to
buy the book.
Read the book. Buy the book. Uh-oh, he's leaving me. I see you.
Okay, well, all right, then.
Okay, well, you tell them it's great seeing you. I will see you in a few days.
So I'm going to ask a few other questions.
Yes, ma'am. So the mom meeting, I'm going to tell you, the mother meeting was like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I had no emotional baggage about it. I felt really relieved that I heard like all these stories from her,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no bitterness
On your part.
on my part. So that's kind of, even though I was like, wow, could we like stay in touch? And I thought maybe she would stay in touch a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, but she really didn't. But man, when you have kids, things change. And so did my outlook and my temperament and a number of other things. And that's what I'm working through. And that's the
Mm.
next 25 to 30
That's the
years
next book.
of, no, that's in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you can read about.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were the one who always initiated a call to her, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. She never called you,
right.
right? So, and you lost touch with your mother somehow. At the end of the book, did you ever find her again?
You need to read the book.
Well, you
Hey,
made something
hey,
of
hey,
you made
hey,
something
hey, hey.
of an appeal on television.
I did. So I don't know how many people saw the appeal. Okay. So all these other people didn't. So they really don't know.
They really don't know.
They don't know.
What do you want a reader to get from your book?
Wow. So I want them to get off their chest what needs to be out of them. We all hold on to things that we shouldn't. There are all sorts of questions we have about who we are, about where we come from. I think you are worth those answers are worth being answered. Most importantly, I do not want children who were born out of a set of circumstances that aren't considered normal or established as acceptable to live in the shame of that. I really, so much of my life, I lived in the shame of like my origin story. And I really think that's unfair to children who were born into these situations.
You have no control over
I
it.
didn't have any control.
Yeah,
So
you just
it's like the
arrived.
people who are like arguing over the issue of abortion, right? So, you know, there are all sorts of ways to look at this really fractious, really div- guttural like issue. And sometimes people get lost in the are we saving lives? And there are all these people, in my estimation, aside from that question, where are we working to save the lives of the children that are already
We're
here?
here. That's right.
Where are we I mean, the same people who are, rallying behind, a particular way, and I'm trying to stick to the middle here,
Mm-hmm.
but they're diametrically opposed to funding, children's education, children's health care, I mean, there's all, you name it.
And the mothers too.
And the mothers
Yeah,
who
MIA.
have challenges in that. And I think we spend a lot of money. It's like, you know what you're about when you are okay with how you spend your money. If you're spending your money on, one thing and not another, I don't want to go there, but I'm just saying it's really apparent. And so I just believe that people need to be about not judging other people for the circumstances in their life, for personal choices that they make, for being who they are. I just think that we need to be really clear on what impacts you as the individual is your right, and you as the individual is your absolute your absolute ability to live in that. And I think I do. I'm a red-blooded American who loves being a woman and an African American, who loves her 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 plethora of engagements with people. I love all that this nation has to offer. I just don't like hatred. I don't like intolerance. I don't like miseducation. Those are my three don't likes. So don't come at me with your hatred, don't come at me with your intolerance, and don't come at me with your ignorance. And then we'll be fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
We're going to have time for some questions, but I am beyond embarrassment. I have been here in this tent since 8:30 this morning, and I neglected to read your introductions.
Oh,
so
that's right.
Yeah,
It did seem a little
and
like...
you sort of asked, "Are you going to introduce us?" I'm like, "Yeah," but I didn't. So I'm apologizing, and I'm just going to do it now because you've already seen how amazing and wonderful they are. But we're going to have the words
Sure.
about it. Okay.
Validate us.
Validate you through words. You've seen it here. You've seen how amazing they both are. Michelle Miller is an Emmy, Gracie, DuPont, and Murrow award-winning journalist who co-hosts CBS Saturday Morning. She first joined CBS News in 2004, and her work is also regularly featured on CBS Mornings, CBS Sunday Morning, and CBS Evening News, which sounds like a 24-hour job. She has also appeared as a correspondent on 48 Hours. It's beyond 24, it's 48. Belonging, her memoir tells the story of parental abandonment, racial identity, and 5 decades of family secrets. We have a little dispute about whether you're going to get a plaque over there.
A book signing.
Yeah, we'll get. I'll do
we'll
that.
work it
But
out.
I just
Okay.
believe in.
Okay. And then Daryl Alexander worked in many sections of New York Times, including the magazine, Food, and the National and Metro desks. She also edited Education Life. Miss Alexander held various positions at Essence Magazine, including editor-in-chief. She is also an artist, focusing mainly on the figurative image. Her work is currently on view at the Granary Gallery in West Tisbury and Nowhere Art Gallery in Oak Bluffs.
Can I just add one more thing, because I'm very proud of this, and I worked really hard to get it done. I'm a New York Times best-selling author.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
That is awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And if you don't think that I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? Humble, then you really don't know me.
Well, we just met you, and I didn't mean to interrupt your asking for if there are questions. We have time, maybe 10 more minutes, and if people want to hang around.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, yay.
Microphone right over there, if you do so, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michelle, I'm just curious. Some of us have one parent
Yes.
who's abandoned us, but you have two, and
Just
your
one.
your father.
No, he didn't
You
abandon
don't sense that it's abandonment then, that he was lived apart, that he wasn't part
No,
of it.
so yeah, no. What
I obviously need to read the book. which
right?
I
No, no,
will.
no. My dad did not like. So I was a secret, right? He was
Right.
married with 2 children, in an unhappy marriage. He was a doctor in a social, he was in that society space, and so when he had me in secret. And when I came back to California, I lived with my grandmother, and he would come
Back and
to
forth.
the house back and forth. So, like, I'm thinking he traveled a good, 25 to 30 minutes each way, and I
So
would
he
see him 3
clearly
to 4
gave you the
times a
sen-
week.
He clearly gave you the sense of being loved.
Oh yes. No, my
So-
dad was. He was the apple of my eye.
So your mother, who didn't want to acknowledge you essentially until you were 24, when you were younger, did that sense of abandonment? How did you work through that? How did you overcome that?
Right, and so that's throughout the book in a way that, and it's interesting because here and anywhere I've actually spoken, people come up to me, and it's really interesting. There are people who are adopted. There are people who are estranged from their parents. There are people like me who never knew that they were a love child. There are people who are parents of mixed race children dealing with, not necessarily abandonment, but issues of non acceptance. And so the way this resonates is my mother still doesn't publicly acknowledge me because, in her mind, to do that would destroy her entire almost 80 years of life, or, well, I would say 50 years that she told no one about me would be like, she said, they would think I was a liar. And that's what happens when you live with a secret. It's like, and people live with, it's like people who live not being their true self as LGBTQ. Like, I can spot somebody who who has like an issue or a secret. I call it a secret because they live in a bubble. And all of my friends who are living in the closet LGBTQ, I've always said, just come out. You will be able to live your life in such splendor. It will just, people who don't like you because of that, then you know. But the people, you will be so surprised by those who engage and love you. And when they do, it's like, oh my God. So it's like, whatever secret it is, it's so freeing.
It's personal liberation.
It really is personally liberating. And so my working through it, I'm still working through it. But you know what? I kind of come to like an epiphany. I can share this with you. Like literally the epiphany came in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And someone said, Michelle, and I've heard this, but it's sunk in. They said, Michelle, and she said this, it's in the book. You would not be the person you are if I had raised you. So she said that, and I was like, yeah, I believe you. But you know how when someone says something to you, and you kind of know it, but it doesn't like seep into you? Like, it really is, it is seeped into me in a way where I'm like, oh, yes, thank God I had my life. Because I'm not sure, I think I would have been this hidden person. I think I would have had all of her anxiety in a way because she isn't out loud. I am an out loud liver. I look at this man and I say,
more charming than roguish.
absolutely charming. Yes. I like that tilt up against the pole, sir.
Liking his style.
So I'm not sure, did that answer your question? Okay, good. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Lisa.
I just want to say thank you for all your work,
Thank
your work
you.
on air and all your reporting. I know how hard it is, so I really appreciate it and love seeing you on air. Thank you for the book. I want to find out, how is it you carved out the time to write it?
I had help.
Okay.
I had a wonderful co-writer by the name of Rosemarie Rabotham, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but she was a gift to me. When I say a gift, like, someone told me she is the person you need to help you, and she is a beautiful writer. And so I remember handing, because the person's here, I remember handing that 60-page proposal to the person here. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I'm just going to say the person is here. And handing that 60-page proposal and her reading it and her saying, whoa, you need help. It is all over the place. And because that's how my mind is. I'm like in chaos. And literally, I was writing this during COVID. And literally, like, the process of writing long form, the most I write is probably, for what I do, 12 pages. That's 12 pages is about 12 minutes.
Okay.
Right? So, think about that. this book was 320 pages and arc storytelling, and I'm really good at that for television. But the pros of really putting together, and she was able to kind of, she really just, and she's just so, she's just the bomb. So I had help because I was really stressed out over the writing process, and she also knew how to excavate memory. It's hard for me to express emotional, to, it's hard for me with outside of like maybe 3 sentences for me to go deep into me, because I think back to the point we were talking about, compartmentalize in a way. She just could, it was like pulling a thread of a sweater and then everything kind of unwinds, and she was patient with me, and we went over like ways to say things and how to tell the story so that it stayed true. And if I was trying to, because I protected some people in this, so no, it was, and so the onus of it was that she was like in my ear when she needed me, and I was in her ear when I needed her. So it was a real push pull.
Thank you.
So many of my friends in this business are like, so how did you do it? And I want to do it. And I was like, they were like, I want to write it all by myself. And I'm like, okay, first of all, nobody does this all by themselves. I know 2 people. I know Doug Brinkley and Richard Ford. Those 2 people I know do it because I've seen them do it. But I said, you can wait until you retire and you have the time, or you can get help and make sure it's really good and you get it out.
Great. I'm going to work on that. Thank you.
Okay, Who else? Who wants another question? One more. Yes.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
The book was riveting.
Goody, yay.
And so on the theme of getting help, so I have notes all over it.
Okay.
One of my questions, and if this is too personal, you don't have to comment, but I kept longing for this child to have had help. And I know you had, Big Mama, and you had Vandala, all these people who loved you. You talk about this sort of the auxiliary people in your community that became family, but how did you have some help, like therapeutically processing this experience?
So I've never had therapy. I don't know. That might be a bad thing.
I was just...
Yeah, no. I don't
such...
think I'm brave enough for it.
But the book was
Okay.
part of it. It's therapy.
Yeah, but it's not like I have a hang. Yeah, I do have a hang up. I have
Well-
a hang up about therapy because I'm afraid to decompartmentalize.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? I'm afraid to let go completely. Like Rosemary was as far of a deep compartmentalization as I could go. I'm really, really terrified of letting go, and especially now when there's so much going on. Like this book has been, if anybody wants to have like an instant moment of validation, a book is a great way to do it. I mean, professionally for me, it has like really done an incredible. I mean, I am a workhorse. There's nothing different about what I do, but I've gone from
Your stories out there
like
now.
yeah, but just the fact that I've written a book, and I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but it just elevates you. Daryl, help me out here. It elevates you in a way that that I've never seen before.
Well, you work through
I'm
a lot of
taken more
things.
seriously in many places. Am I not supposed to admit that?
Why not? No.
Okay, this is a safe space, everybody.
Exactly.
Why are you looking at me like that, sir? I know you look at me like I'm you and Mr. Rogue right here.
You know that's my
The
husband,
two
right?
of you, I'm gonna have a little conversation with you guys afterwards. All right. You're welcome.
You're in trouble.
Do we have to go? I want to have more time with our friends. Oh, book signing. Got it.
Book signing, hanging out. This is the last session. Thank you very much. We're not going to continue here. This is just.
Can I sign the books here?
I don't
Is there
know.
is there
I
another?
think the people who are in the book signing tent, I see my friend, maybe they
They're
want to go
ready to
home.
go.
Yeah, they're ready to go.
Are all
probably,
the books- are the
probably
books sold?
bunch of grapes is ready to go. So just do what we have to
Okay.
do there, and then people can hang out.
Okay.
The chairs may not
So
be here,
Michelle,
but
you should do one of your iconic poses. You had them in the.
Oh.
thank you so much, and thanks to everybody for being here.